Chukua mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima, kuwa mshindi. Kuwa na uhakika sasa, kukulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Well, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to the Farm Kenya show. My name is Nokip Kimboy and today we have an interesting discussion. Now, the world all over decided that we have to set goals to achieve, to make a better world at the end of the day. That's why there are sustainable development goals developed. And one of the sustainable development goals, SDG number 2, is about zero hunger at the end of the day. So zero hunger, food security, and also tied to the hip is matters to do with nutrition. Question is, we're supposed to hit these targets by 2030. Now, 2030 is just a couple of years back. Where are we as a country? Where are we as a continent? And where are we as the globe at large? This is the foundation of our discussion today. And today I have Nanzala Lazarus, who is the Senior Policy and Advocacy Officer at SDG2 Advocacy Hub. Welcome to the Farm Kenya show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Pleasure to have me.
Thank you very much, Lazarus. Just to lay the foundation, help us, remind us why SDGs are very important and why specifically SDG2.
So you remember, Kipkemboy, that before SDGs, as you put it, we had Millennium Development Goals, which were 10 Millennium Goals that the world was working towards achieving. I think world leaders did realize that measuring the Millennium Development Goals, they were too broad, they were too global, they could not relate to the common realities. And that's where we came up with Sustainable Development Goals, which is a set of 17 goals, quite detailed, quite with a lot of parameters and how they are measured. But specifically with SDG number 2, which is what I work in, and the organization that I work with really focuses on SDG number 2, about ending hunger, is because that's all about our food. That's all about our nutrition. That's all about the future of the world. Yes, if you don't end poverty, SDG 1, you are not going anywhere. But if you are not providing food for people that is safe, that is nutritious, then even the young generation is lost. So that's where the world is. And there were a set of goals that were different from the Millennium Development Goals in that they were supposed to be embedded in national development plans. And I think that's where, as you put it, is where are we as a country, where are we as a continent, and where are we globally?
Okay.
I can give you a snippet. We are very much behind.
You're very much behind.
Yeah.
And we'll take a look at what can be done from a policy perspective, but also involving the general populace. Because sometimes when we discuss some of these concepts, it is limited to thinkers and think tanks, whereas it is something that touches the lives of each and every Kenyan. So how can we sort of bring it down so that it's a reality to every Kenyan on how we can achieve zero hunger by 2030? That is a discussion that we'll have later on. But thank you very much for making time, Lazarus. And in that spirit, when you talk about food security and zero hunger, it's not just provision of food itself. It's also provision of quality food, okay? And this touches on nutrition at the end of the day. One of the areas that is the biggest, one of the major suppliers of wonderful protein is the fish sector. And in today's segment of Farmer of the Week, we take a look at a farmer and a group of farmers who've gone out to go into matters to do with cage fish farming. This is quite interesting. It is changing lives not only to bring an income to these farmers, but also to produce the much needed nutritious fish. Take a look.
Anne Anyango is a fish farmer from the Litare Fish Farmers Women's Group in Rusinga Island of Homa Bay County. They practice cage fish farming, a new climate-smart technology introduced to them in 2019. For the untrained person, as she struggles to balance on the edge of the cage to feed the fish.
From the beginning tulikuwa 25. Sasa wamama kuna wengine wako sijui niseme wako lazy ama wako aje. Sasa watu wakianza uwezi ukafika huko perfect venye mlianza. Kuna wengine wenye wanaogopa, kuna wengine wenye hawataki kufanya kazi. Sasa ikifika hiyo time ya kuharvest hapo, sasa unapata sasa hapo ndio mama wako active. Ukiweka samaki hiyo ya kwanza hizo fingerlings tunaenda kwa baharini mara 3 in a day ukifanya feeding. Sasa apart from being a member, hiyo nini ya kwanza nimekuwa feeder. Sasa hiyo place ya feeder unajua kama kuna mwenye mnaenda na yeye asipokuja unaenda huko peke yako. Sasa venye umeona tu venye nimeenda unasema niko na courage huko. Niko na courage kwa sababu hapo mimi huwa naenda hata peke yangu. Sasa hiyo mambo ya cage farming pia imenifundisha hata kuendesha boat najua kwa sababu saa zingine unafaa uende huko wengine hawako. Saa zingine tuko na chairperson wetu peke yake tuko wawili. Itabidi tuende huko. Alafu kuna times zenye zinafika kama tuko karibu na harvesting. Mambo ya insecurity huwa inakuwa. Samaki zinaibiwa. Ikifika hapo tena inakuwa ni kulala huko baharini na ni wamama wanalala kwa group sisi ni wamama.
Despite the challenges, cage fish farming has empowered the women and reduced dependency on men as well as sexual exploitation in exchange for fish.
Kuna issue ilikuwa inaitwanga jaboya. Hiyo ya sex for fish. Wenye tunafanya cage farming imetusaidia sasa hii kila mama kuna pesa yake. Inatakikana kila mama ajitokeze aanze biashara yake apate yenye anaweza saidia nayo familia yake. Sasa wasikae ati wanangojea ati mabwana.
The islands of Mfangano, Rusinga, Mbita and Suba North are the preferred areas if one wants to venture into cage fishing. Cage fishing is all about the volume of water and how clean the water is. A cage with a depth of 7 meters and 10 meters in diameter can accommodate over 30,000 fish.
Bei ya chakula inakuwa ni kali. Cage ni moja. Sasa tulieka samaki Februari. Mpaka sasa unajua bado tunangojea tu hiyo. Na kama tuko na zingine, sasa tukiweka at intervals. Sasa tungekuwa tuna harvest nyingine ina grow. Na sasa ingine pia mna stock saa hiyo. Sasa venye ni moja. Tunangoja for all those 8 months.
Despite being capital intensive, fish ponds are quickly growing popularity in Homa Bay. Through support from the county government and its partners, Joel Othiambo has seen significant improvement in his livelihood.
When you want to harvest, we get local labor. There are neighbors and young people around who have become friends. And when we want to harvest, we call them. And we use them to help us in the harvesting. So they get into the ponds. It's not very easy for me at my age to get into the pond. At the beginning was not very easy because the cost of the fish pond, the cost of stocking it, and a major problem here was lack of water. Water has been quite a big challenge. And but somehow we worked through the first one and learned our lessons. And now we have realized it's profitable. And now we are interested in doing it. Actually, my wife is trying to push me so that we do a few other ponds on top of this.
Through such interventions, the county's fisheries department is expecting over 1,000 tons in fish production this year. For Farmer of the Week, I'm Paul Mbogwa.
All right. Farmer of the Week, quite interesting there, how cage fish farming is growing by the day, but also emerging challenges by those young women who have ventured into this, talking about security when it comes to harvesting. They have to actually stay in the lake to protect their products, that is the fish. It's quite interesting. I mean, listening to that, how does this marry into the overall conversation about achieving zero hunger and food security?
It is quite interesting, and when the lady was speaking first, she mentioned the challenges of fish and the lake. If you look at it, even why are we doing cages in a lake that was giving us abundant? It has various factors. One of it being that we can no longer get enough fish as we used to get maybe 20, 30 years ago from this massive lake. So it means we have then to be able to adapt better and put in some of this. But that's quite a story that also resonates with me, because fish is one of my delicacies. And I know you might speak about this later. It's also one that is misunderstood sometimes, and gives us either more nutrients that we need or less, just depending on how you prepare it. And that goes into a lot of behaviors that we have been able to develop over the years, and how then, even with food being available, what we get out of it in terms of the nutritional supplements and nutrients that we really need, we don't maximize that. And a lot of the behaviors that we have really shifted across.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you touch on productivity. Years ago, we used to have more. Then there are emerging challenges, for example, like Victoria, overfishing, and we see this a lot happening. Now we have to sort of innovate around it.
Yeah.
It seems there might be, because you're a policy guy, is there a policy solution to this that can trickle down to solve some of the challenges that we see with that group of ladies?
One thing that has happened along the lake especially is the county governments especially, they have really come in to support, and there are quite a lot of enterprises that have grown out of this type of farming. Not only the cage, but even pond. I don't know if you remember sometimes when the former president Uhuru was the finance minister, he did allocate a lot of resources to fish farming, including across the country, and even people who predominantly were not growing fish, like in central Kenya and other regions, were really invested, and a lot of resources were put into it, just not like along the lake. So those are some of the policy provisions that the government can really be able to put in. But when you scale that just beyond fish, and we look into the food systems as a whole, that's where I think the government response has been, how can I say, more reactive rather than thinking ahead. Just the way we are now seeing what was happening 20, 30 years ago, can we look 20, 30 years ahead? Because some of the bigger thing, just beyond even overfishing itself, is our population. Our population is growing at a rapid rate, but alongside that is the impacts of climate change as well. I don't think the rivers that were flowing into our lakes are flowing as they were doing before. But even when they are flowing, what is it that they are carrying along? A lot of things that we are using in our farms. So all these activities, the human activities that we do engage in, they end up impacting the end products that we want to see, and that's the food that we want to see on our tables.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I remember I was scrolling on X the other day, and I think a guy was traveling. I don't know whether it's part of central Kenya, and he bought one of these fish that they sell by the roadside.
Along the road.
Yes. Sort of looking a little bit reddish. He thought it's gonna be amazing. Then he cooked it, and it was like one of the worst. And somebody told him, actually, that is an invasive species of a fish. So you really have to also be very careful when you're purchasing, and you know what exactly you are purchasing, which is quite interesting. But now on that note, I'd like us to take at commodity prices, and it touches on fish, different types of fish, from kingfish to catfish to Kenya's favorite, tilapia. Let's take a look at commodity prices. All right, those are the commodity prices. And we want to come back to a discussion for the day. And this touches on the issue of, food security, zero hunger to be specific. A lot has changed, Lazarus. Over the years, we've seen our population and the global population change. Yeah. That puts a lot of constraint to our different means of production. When we talk about land, there is the pressure of the population and people settling, real estate and whatnot, so less agricultural land. When you look at the demand for food on the other side is growing by the day as the numbers grow. So we are in an economically and a very variable environment when it comes to change. Yeah. When it comes to food security, just paint for us the picture when it comes to dealing with hunger in this country. Where are we coming from and where are we currently as Kenya?
So, this is not only a Kenyan problem, be it population, be it food. And I'll start from some numbers that were released just this July by FAO, the UN agency. And it showed that although hunger was decreasing globally, in most parts, Africa, it was rising. And Kenya is not different. One of the biggest hits that as a country we have, ones that have really impacted our food security and food systems as a whole, is climate. And of course, climate can be quite broad, but you narrow it down to drought, for example. Just before even we go to the things that we can be able to do as well. I think from 2011, there was a report that the government was part of. From 2011 until last year, we lost almost just over 2% of our GDP to droughts alone. Droughts and flood and extreme climate events. That's one thing that has really impacted the way we produce food. And how do we produce most of our food if you are not importing? It's through rain-fed agriculture. A lot of the food that we eat in this country is rain-fed. So if it's not raining, if we are having a drought or we are having a flood, then it means that our production goes down. But also, just to specifically mention it, when we speak about food security, I think sometimes we also think that as long as you walk out in your house and food is on the table, then you're food secure. It's never the case for most families. It's all about the nutrients that your body needs. And I'm not an expert in nutrition, so I may not give you the technicals and the small elements that your body needs, but it goes to that level. Someone might be eating a smaller plate, but they're getting enough of what they need. I have a bigger plate of ugali, and I might not survive. If I'm under 5, then I might not even maybe grow to the height that is required by necessary, like the gold standard that I should be able to do. So all those factors put together, behavior is one key one. I think in Kenya also we are seeing a very high rate of urbanization. Nairobi alone it drives our economy and has one of our biggest, most popular city, I think, in Africa, and that is continuing to grow. But then one thing that lacks in all these trends is we are not keeping pace. The level of investment that the government is doing is not keeping pace to some of these trends that are happening.
Okay.
We have good dietary guidelines issued by Ministry of Health, for example, but how many people are aware of this? I'll give you a small story. When I was still in primary, many years ago, I remember, and I hated that teacher then, but she kept castigating us in the class and saying, our area where our school was, you produce a lot of things. You produce nduma, you produce sweet potatoes, you produce the best vegetables. But then your mothers, I keep meeting them going to the market to sell. Then they bring you mandazi. And of course, you understand the Kenyan context. And I was like, I love mandazi. What are you saying? But now later I learned, she was speaking about what we're speaking about today, which is food needs to be produced closer also to where it's being consumed. You go to Wakulima market every morning, there are trucks and trucks of foods coming in from the various food basket areas of this country. So that's also another element, because we have a higher population, food has to be moved, and that impacts not only the the quality of the food itself, but also the prices.
Okay.
And I think since COVID, one of the things that have really happened in both sides is that people dealing in food have made a lot of money, but the consumers have really suffered. Because price of food, I think, has gone up with more than 10% over since post-COVID as well.
Yeah.
So all these factors combined make it quite very difficult. And just anchoring it to the element of the SDGs, which was more, especially about ending hunger. SDG 2 specifically cannot be achieved without its counter, which is SDG 1, which is about eradicating poverty. So, and in Africa, and I think is not different in Kenya, agriculture as a sector, which is the food systems, employs around 60% of the population. And I think in Kenya, it contributes around 22% of our GDP. Now, what that means is that if it's not doing well, if you're not, the government is not putting there and it's getting pressure and people are not getting enough money, then our farmers are continually growing poor. And I know you have heard about this talk where the farmer is always poor. And like it's a sector that doesn't give back. But it doesn't need to be that way. And it should not be that way. And we can always borrow examples from elsewhere where a lot has been done.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think I will be able to look at some of those interventions that we need to make to make sure that, first of all, value chain players, there is no imbalance, because always the gap between the final price and the offtake price from the farmer, it's, for lack of a better word, it's ungodly. You know, it's crazy margins that you can't imagine, and farmers are barely surviving at the end of the day. So what can be done? Also, there is that element of cost of production at the farm level that we need interventions towards, to make sure, if at all, food's going to be available and affordable in a world that poverty is a problem. Then we have to look at the production cost at the end of the day. So what interventions also need to be made in that regard? And lastly, where we are policy-wise, I think that will also be important for us to look at, because, I mean, when it comes to food security, it's one of those talking points that have been made over and over again, especially within our leadership. So policy-wise, is it anchored properly? It's something that we'll take a look at after this short break. Remember, it's the Farm Kenya show, and we are discussing zero hunger. How we achieve that is a discussion today. We're going to take a short break. Still to come is this issue of how we make sure that hunger is not part and parcel of the Kenyan society, Africa, and the world at large. Stay tuned.
Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Every now and then, fake news might pull a few strings, but when it comes to reporting the facts, there's only one tune we dance to, our own. For more than 100 years, The Standard has delivered insightful fact-based journalism, and you can't fake that.
Leo umepatikana. Sile pesa nilikupatia sajama, siko wapi? Ekasi.
Onyituria niko bange. Onyituria. Nipe Ron.
Yeye pia alikuomba pesa. Nani anaenda zamu? Mimi ndo naenda. Wachana na huu wazimu.
Unaita nani wazimu bwana?
Na nikuulize? Ama unataka nikupatie tarumbeta osindo ukitangazia kila mtu ya kwamba unanitai?
By the way, yo kitu ya mbuzi umebeba inaongea.
Unasikia kifanya nini? Ndugu yangu, mbona unanikasirisha bure? Unaona ochinga yenye umefanya kaenda? Wataripia.
Nitakuramba kofi wewe, unasikia?
Afike wapi? Wewe, afadhali uende na mimi. Hata uende mpaka urudishe pesa na kuuza. Wewe.
Your rooms are minimalistic, and I love the dash touch of sea theme, you know, with the paintings. Very beautiful. And anybody who walks in will enjoy it and love it. You know, it's airy, it's spacious, very sophisticated. Talk to me about your rooms, and particularly your master bedroom with a walk-in closet. Guys, have a look at this room. Isn't it just so spectacular?
Yeah. So, I wanted... So the whole house has a very natural feel.
Okay.
And I wanted it to have indoor-outdoor kind of a feel.
All right.
So that is why the living room opens up into the garden. And then in the bedroom you have the ceiling with the stars. And so it gives you that feeling like you're out in the open. The big windows allow fresh air to come in, so you sleep. It's like you're sleeping under the stars with fresh air coming. And from the garden, there's a lot of flowers, so you get the beautiful smell of jasmine as you're sleeping.
Oh, wow.
And the walk-in closet, I wear scrubs all the time.
Okay.
But I love fashion, and
yes, see
you
your
can
collection.
See that.
Yes, the collection of your
yeah.
clothes there, and even your bathroom as well. Oh my goodness, it's so extra. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have very good taste, Dr. Pancholi. Dr. Pancholi, are you dating? Yeah, are you single searching? Are you single taken? Are you single? I mean, I'm just asking, Dr. Pancholi.
Well, it depends on who's asking.
Okay, if Naila is asking. If Naila is asking.
Oh, I'm single. I'm single, baby.
Kuwa mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima, kuwa mshindi, kuwa na uhakika sasa, kukulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Kenya.
All right, welcome back to the Farm Kenya show. We are discussing matters to do with zero hunger. And in studio, I have Nanzala Lazarus, who's the Senior Policy and Advocacy Officer at SDG2 Advocacy Hub. Remember, SDG2 tackles matters to do with ending hunger, achieving food security, and improved nutrition. Lazarus, now, where we are as a country right now, policy-wise, it's quite interesting because we've seen quite a number of interventions when it comes to pushing food security. The big one, of course, is issues to do with fertilizer, making sure that our farmers are supplied with affordable fertilizer. As much as it's at one point it was marred with scandals here and there, it seems to be quite a noble initiative. Maybe walk me through, as from a policy perspective, when you see some of these interventions, what have they been, and have you seen the impact moving the country towards zero hunger by 2030?
Yeah, thanks. And we must give some due clap to the government. They have really tried. The world has been going through a difficult period since COVID. And also especially African governments with climate. It has been quite big. But I want to just take you a bit to the continent. At the African Union level, way back in 2003, African leaders met in Maputo in Mozambique. And one of the key commitments they made was to invest heavy in agriculture. And they passed a big framework called the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. We call it CADEP, for 10 years. A few countries did manage to invest, put in the 10% budget. But in the background, why were they doing this? I think they realized that Africa, agriculture is the backbone, not only of the economy, is a big employer, but that if we're also able to feed our people, then we'll grow economically. So that was the goal. 10 years later, they went in 2014 in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. They committed, they expanded it, not only investing in agriculture, they said we also want to trade among ourselves as a continent. Because if you are here, and I think you might know this story of Kenya when they were testing export of tea, they wanted to export tea to Ghana, and because it has to go to Mombasa, then go around the continent, I think it took 4 months. Somebody from the US will have taken and exported tea to Ghana maybe in 4 weeks. So they also wanted to trade among themselves more. Now, this year in January, they met again in Kampala, Africa Heads of State. President Ruto, our president, was there. And they agreed we need to recommit to these goals. Not only on 10% of our budget going to agriculture, but we need to make agri-food systems, which is now more the value chains, what you were talking about earlier, ensuring that there is fairness in the value chain. How can we support our farmers? How can we ensure that if I'm growing my cabbages, they are not rotting on the field, that there is good infrastructure to take it to the market? So that's one policy framework that all African governments have agreed. And why I'm taking time a bit to speak about that, is because countries are now more connected than ever. We need to trade with each other. The challenges that we face are more cross-border. You remember some time back, was it 3 years ago, when we had this, what were they? This insect that came all the way across.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll get it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's
a big problem.
Yeah, across farms from Djibouti to Ethiopia, Kenya. So we have to more coordinate closely. But now in Kenya, I think when this government came in, one of the things of course, they focused on many other policies. And of course, as you said, fertilizer subsidy was one of it. But just to take it back is, I think one thing our policy people have not been able to do is, or look at, maybe there are people in government who tell them, is that the sector of agriculture and food as a whole needs continuous investment and needs continuous policy implementation on a continuous basis. You can never say that we did this and we produced maybe 300,000 metric tons of maize and now people will be okay for the next 5 years. It's a continuous process and people have to really invest in. So the government did well in saying we want to support farmers, because one of the things we face in Africa as a challenge also is that our farms are producing less and less food compared to the rest of the world. We have maybe more than 50% of the world's uncultivated land, but our means of production are still very, very low. So the government did well in investing that, because you remember that time is when we had the Russia-Ukraine crisis. They're the biggest exporters of fertilizer, and the fertilizer had gone up. So that helped a lot of farmers ensure that they can affordably be able to access fertilizer. But beyond that, the sector, what people need also is seeing how do we also help. I don't want to use the word subsidize, but that's how it is, because globally farmers are heavily subsidized. The smallholder farmers. These are you and me, my mother, your mother, our parents in the rural, especially in the rural areas, who are just trying to make a living out of their farm. Because when we look at agro as well and food sector, we look at it as one that feeds us. But it feeds us in many ways. In our farms, it's also a source of livelihood. That's where I'll get my money to go pay for school fees for my kid. That's why I get money to go ensure that if my kid is sick, I can pay for their health. So if I'm not making money out of this farm, and the government is not supporting and putting this policy so that they are connected, I'm growing my potatoes in Nyandarua, for example, and then you know how those guys come, and then the saki is even taller than the tallest person you can have in this country, then I'll never go back and be productive in that farm. So the policies have to be quite encompassing. Something we are calling now, and I think it's something even our government is looking at, a food systems approach. So that it's no longer just the agriculture ministry, it's the health ministry, it's the finance ministry, and everybody is putting in resources, and all these are connected. Just back to the policy I was speaking about, CADEP. Only I think Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, and Malawi at some point got to the 10% threshold. In Kenya, I think we have never even gone beyond 5%.
That's true.
In terms of the amount that we invest.
Yeah.
Of course, when you draw small budgets here and in different, for example, here we separate our Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock with water and irrigation. Those are different. If you combine them, maybe it's bigger.
But so they term as enablers and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how that then comes back to the smallholder, even where we started, if farmers are doing cage farming in the lake, what is the government then providing? Cold storage, for example. So those are smaller things that if the governments really invest resources in, then the sector is likely to grow.
Definitely.
In terms of policy investment. But at the heart of all that is how we finance and how we make sure that these resources are flowing down to the local man or the local woman. Definitely. Or the local youth, and that we are encouraging them to see, especially even the young people, to see value in that agriculture will pay, that, I don't know the Gen Z language to use. They say that agriculture is more sexy, like is more appealing. Then that's how we're able to feed our country going forward in the long term.
Yeah, and even online we've been seeing a very interesting discourse, because there is that struggle between production, especially smallholder production, and now there is almost like a global approach of mass production, where smallholders have been told, and even change in land policies in one or another, how and that impacting how we're going to do agriculture. Of course, we use Kiambu County as a case in point, where Kiambu is very fertile, but also the population has been growing so much, and the investment, traditionally people who used to do coffee in Kiambu, it's more lucrative to put up flats, and you get better returns. How does this marry into the larger policy discussion for us to achieve zero hunger?
So you have mixed quite 3 or 4 relevant examples. Of course, now Kiambu is no longer the coffee farms that we knew.
Yes.
Is now concrete and still coming up and eating even into more. And Kiambu is one, Kajiado is the other. The pastoralists can no longer roam as they used to roam before. But to come to just how all this ensures that we're able to get to zero hunger in 5 years, we still believe we can get there. Even if we don't get to the finish line, we will just be closer if government is able to do that. Land use, especially in this country, is a very critical element. Because remember, when you own land, you don't just own it for growing crops or keeping livestock. That's where you live, and you can use it for many things. Have it as a security to access resources. In even our biggest farmer lending bank, the biggest security they have is land. And our policy has never been the best in terms of ensuring that people can access. Women are the biggest in the agriculture sector. They own least of the land. Men are the dominant owners of the land. And I know one of the things you're referring to is, I think our government has been speaking lately of encouraging people not to continually subdivide our land in a way that limits production. If you are using mechanized farming, for example, you need a bit of meters for a tractor to go and come around. But I think the way the government communicates this policy has to be a bit structured. Like, it's not something you'll go in a political rally the way we have seen our leaders do, then shout about it. Then people get cagey because they have a bad history with land in this country. But I think you have to look mechanisms that focus on the local realities in some of these areas, so that then you're ensuring that people are getting the right message. But land is a key thing that I think the government has to ensure that they're able to get right. But also around that, and one thing that we haven't invested as a country and as a continent is area of research and development. Okay. And I know this one that maybe you might know, and I know we are speaking about this even before we came on air. For example, seeds. There has been a very big debate about, and I've met my friends and my comrades in the space who say, a few years back, my grandmother, my mother used to keep their own seed, then they could just come out, they plant. Then if they are not doing well, I go to the other village and check to maybe my brother, the far side, yes. How are your seeds doing? But the challenge with that is that as time goes, your seeds, our seed, like the level of production you get is low. So we have to invest in research and development and see, can we combine your seed and my seed and produce a better seed? But one of the things we have been urging is the government has to invest in that element, in research and development. CalRO, for example, that's the area it has to invest in. But when you go to CalRO budget, apart from the operational budget that they have, which is staff and buildings, the government invests almost zero in the projects that they do. But we have seen examples of how if the government put its money, it can change things. I'm sure there's one thing you might know and your audience might resonate with. If we say kari kienyeji, that's like always a common language. If someone wants to keep poultry, they'll always say, bring me kari kienyeji. And that's a project that took over 10 years for kari to invest, do research, test, and trial. And finally, they come up with a poultry breed that everybody could relate with. The test might not be the roadrunner type, but it's still better than the others that are in the industry. So that's also one area that we have encouraged our governments to be able to invest in. The bigger one is, I don't think we need more new policy framework. If you just check in our Ministry of Ag in this country, for example, you'll get all, be it agriculture sector growth strategy, be it our national nutrition and food security policy, be it our dietary guidelines by the Ministry of Health. They outline all the things that we really need as a country. What we need is our governments to then put in the resources and invest in some of these things. Agriculture is a devolved function. But when you go to my county, for example, I really struggle to get an extension work. If my cattle are not well, I have to get out money to chase a private veterinary person who will come and look at my cattle. Then I'll still have to go back and buy the drugs from a local vet supplier, agrovet, at my own cost. The government doesn't come in to chip in and help farmers. And as long as we are not investing at the last mile to ensure that we are supporting, we are like covering the costs, not directly, but the things that can be mass covered by the government are being covered, then we are likely not to move towards ending hunger. Because as I said, it's not just making food available, it's about making the right food available for the people, but also more importantly, making sure that the people who are producing the food are able to benefit. Okay. And just to close it again back to the Africa continent, as of last year, we were spending, I think it's around 80 to 100 billion US dollars every year importing food. What are we importing? Wheat, maize, and some of those things that if you were discussing about Galana Kulalu or in the plains of Ethiopia, you'll grow enough to feed the continent. But because we don't invest and see ahead and invest in advance, we are letting others feed us at our own cost again. Yeah.
And that is quite concerning.
Yeah.
As we come to the end of this conversation, the role of each and every person, be it at the continental level, that is Africa or Kenya, to be specific.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk policy, when you talk SDG, it seems, first of all, it's something that is being done to us.
Yeah.
And secondly, sometimes these discussions can be quite, for lack of a better word, over there.
Abstract.
Yes,
Yeah,
abstract is
yeah.
there. You know,
Yeah.
you're dealing with SDGs. How many are there again? Then you say, 17.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 is zero hunger. So sometimes that landing and the personal role that we carry. And this brings in my question. As a people within the country, how can we actively be part of this journey of the country achieving and the continent achieving zero hunger?
So that's quite interesting, because by the end of the day, it's about our behavior and what we do. As SDG 2 Advocacy Hub, we coordinate actions at global level, Kenya included, actors working towards achieving the SDGs. And one thing we realized quite quickly when we started doing this work around some 8-10 years ago was that for us to achieve zero hunger, it's a mix of issues. It's a systems failure that has caused all this. So, for example, we coordinate people, but we have initiated nuanced campaigns in between. For example, we have a network of over 700 chefs all around the globe, Kenya included, who are using their voices to shift people back to foods that people have neglected. You have seen that a lot. Right now, I think if you go to many hotels, big hotels in Kenya, you'll see nduma, you'll see sweet potatoes being served. Is out of that campaign that we are trying to say, bringing on big names of chefs to do beans in a way that when you eat it, you don't feel like this is what I hated in high school. We also have put up a campaign on Hungry for Action, which is a big campaign. We're asking governments to really put in efforts and make sure that they are putting in money where it's needed. But just specific to Kenya and the people is about, we have to check our behavior. Most of the time that I've met people who are conscious about what they're eating, they have been conscious because they have gone to the doctor. And the doctor has told them, you have to stop taking sugar. Nanzala, now you can no longer be able to eat ugali, lunch and dinner, because now we need to change. Then now you see shift in behavior. And that's because even here in Nairobi, for example, the poor are lacking because they don't have money to buy the food they need. Those who are blessed enough are going for the junk. And you can guess by the number when you drive by Nairobi, people driving into the fast foods. And that's where I think we have to play our role in terms of ensuring that our behaviors are right. And it has even, like right now, for example, insurance firms, for example, providing medical covers, alongside their salespeople, you'll always find a nutritionist who goes to their clients and speaks to them now in it, because they're trying to prevent. So we have also to look ahead and prevent a lot of these things and change our behavior. But why is that important? Very, very specifically is that when we eat local, when we eat what is produced closer to us, what is more what we'll call traditional, we're also supporting that local farmer. And that way we're able to develop a very effective ecosystem. So even if the government is not bringing in money, which we want them to bring, our money is going and investing in the local farmers, local farms, who are then able to invest back into our economy and our food systems as a whole.
Definitely. And that builds the best, because we say agriculture is the backbone of Kenya's economy. At the same time, that backbone is dominated by smallholder farmers. And now if you make interventions where smallholder farmers are able to earn decent living from doing what they do, it not only changes their lives, but the whole economy of the best of the country, which is incredible. And even up the value chain, agriculture employs a lot of people. But definitely, as you rightly put it, Lazarus, is that intervention is critical, and more importantly, not going heavy on policy but implementation, because we've made more than enough policies. Now 100%. It's implementing, making sure that we are funding agriculture, putting our money where our mouth is at the end of the day. Our time is up, but I really appreciate. Thank you very much for making time. Lazarus Nanzala is the Senior Policy and Advocacy Officer at SDG2 Advocacy Hub, and he says enough of the talk, enough of the typing. It's time to do. We are only counting down 5 years. There is a possibility, if we change our ways, that we'll be able to hit that target, and if not, be a little bit closer to eradicating hunger from Kenya, from Africa, and the world at large. That's been our discussion, and that's our show for today. Thank you very much for being part of the Farm Kenya show. My name is Noah Kipkemboy. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.
Kuwa na uhakika sasa, kukulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja.